Hi, I'm Mary Greendale, and this is Just Thinking. Welcome to our annual series of interviews of candidates for local government offices. The town election is May 21st. We have contests for select board for an open seat. For planning board, we have an incumbent versus a challenger. And for school committee, we have 4 new candidates for 3 seats on the school committee. No incumbent chose to seek re-election to the school committee. I'm interviewing all these candidates. I have prepared questions specific to each board or committee. Each candidate will respond to the same questions for that office in their interview. This allows voters the chance to compare the candidates' approaches and thinking according to the issue. The interviews are done one at a time and will be posted when all the candidates for any office have been interviewed. My goal is to have the videos run 30 minutes, and they will be available on Holliston Hub HCAT's website, on Holliston Hub HCAT's YouTube channel, and on our Facebook page. Let's get started. Now I would like to introduce you to Damon Dimmick, who is a candidate for the Select Board. Hi, Damon.
Hi, Mary. Nice to see you again.
You too, and welcome to HCAT. You have 2 minutes to do an opening and tell us, briefly about yourself or why you're running or whatever you like.
Happy to talk about it. So my name is Damon Dimmick. I've been a resident of Holliston for about 10 years. I live in the Highlands community with my wife and my 2 precocious kids, and we keep finding new reasons to love the town pretty much every week, usually in guise of people that we're meeting and friends that we're making. I'm running for Select Board because, as you know from our previous conversations, I believe very deeply in civic engagement, and I think that Holliston right now is moving towards a really pivotal time. We have a lot of big changes coming, and I think that it's a good idea to have people who are engaged, who care about the town, and who are open to a lot of different perspectives in the helm.
What's your background?
My background is in technology. I've had about 20 years of experience as a technology executive, running lots of multidisciplinary teams in big, complicated projects across multiple time zones with really shifting priorities and tight budgets. Okay,
all right. Why are you running specifically at this time? And do you think that, why did you choose this board? Why didn't you choose to run for the planning board? And we'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, as you may know and remember, about 2 years ago, I actually ran for this position before. At the time, it was against Tina Hine. My heart was definitely not in it because I quite admire the work that she's done. I'm a big supporter of the stuff she's done in regards to the traffic, and she's just been very good as a select board member in general. I've been really interested in getting engaged again, and my interests are kind of horizontal. So I'm really concerned about the possibility of us being able to grow our revenue base in the town, trying to expand the potential for new businesses to come in, but also the big infrastructure projects that we've got coming our way, I think need some guidance. And I represent a part of the town that's kind of the newcomers. 10 years not that new, but it's the families that came as part of that influx during that time. And I think we all have a vested interest in trying to make sure that the town retains its character, but is able to grow scalably, and actually that we can finally achieve some of the civic growth that we've been looking for and some of the business growth that we've been looking for in smart and concerted ways without changing the characteristics of the town too much.
Okay. Have you served on anything in town government, any appointed committees or otherwise?
No appointed committees. I did help a little bit with the Future of Holliston work about 2 years ago. That was the limit of my involvement directly with the town government. Outside of the town, I am involved in a couple of organizations. So there's a great Renaissance choir called Blue Heron, which is out of Cambridge. They won the gramophone a few years ago. I think it's 2018, the first North American group to ever win that. It's a British award. Wow. I think in their 41 years of history. I serve on the governance board there, and I'm also a member of a couple of fraternal organizations, and in town recently joined the Holliston Neighbors and Newcomers, and I've dabbled with a few other organizations as well. As you may know and others know, in my neighborhood, I'm very civically active. I organize all kinds of events, mostly networking, but also small kind of civic public things as well.
Okay. All right, so the select board's the top executive level in town, and please describe what makes you suitable for the roles and responsibilities that you'll find there.
I'm very at ease organizing large, complicated projects. In my background as a technologist and as an executive, I have to make connections with a lot of people, manage a lot of different teams with a lot of different stakeholders, and often situations where the variables at play are changing rapidly, and there's really big questions about prioritization, finding the right people, putting folks in contact with each other, and negotiating things like, what are our priorities, where can we come together, where can we make the sausage and not get people upset. I think as I've been watching the select board working the last couple of years, I've started to realize that it's very much people before problems. And I think that that's a skill that I can bring to the table, and I'm level-headed when it comes to the trade-offs that need to be made.
Okay.
Or at least I think I am.
Do you participate at town meeting, or do you attend town meeting?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're comfortable with the whole notion of while you are an elected representative of the community, you're one of three. Mm-hmm. So you can't do anything unilaterally.
Absolutely.
And then ultimately, town meeting gets to decide, in many of the cases, what you've, thought was a good idea in terms of policy or whether, but are you comfortable with that?
Very comfortable with it. I actually kind of think it's a beautiful thing. People who talk politics with me know that I regard the New England town meeting format as something unique and to be prized. It definitely makes things difficult. Mm-hmm. It means that you have to have a deflatable ego and know that your opinion is not necessarily how other people are going to go. But I think that that's a valuable thing, and it gives us the opportunity to have conversations where, if people don't go along with the way you think, great, you've got another shot in a few months to come back if you'd like, or go with the wisdom of the crowds, because ultimately we're 15,000 people. These are our neighbors. We have to be happy together, and it's okay to be wrong once in a while.
Well, and you're not necessarily wrong. It's just that you had a different viewpoint.
Totally agree.
So what are your top 3 goals for the select board for the next 3 years? I can tell you that the first year will be rapid learning, but
absolutely. So it's tough to say just 3. Obviously, there's so many things in front of the board. If I had to think of large umbrella groups, I think seeing through some of the major infrastructure improvements and fixes that we've got going, definitely something that is on my agenda. I believe we have a few of those in flight that could potentially change the characteristic of the town, hopefully in a good way. But there's stuff there that I think needs a lot of thinking through. I think working on finding new sources of revenue and trying to take on that challenge of expanding the tax base from businesses, that's going to be a bear. I know that we committed, softly in the strategic plan to, I think it was reaching 20% of a mix. That is tremendous if we're at 12 right now, which is, I believe, where we're floating.
Yeah, between 12 and 14, always have.
Yeah, if you squint at it, right? It
yeah.
That seems like a couple of percentage points, but for a town like Holliston, where there's limited space available and the opportunities are sometimes passed over for other towns, that's an enormous responsibility. I take it quite seriously. I think we can get there. And then finally, I think we do need to get ready for a little bit more logistical thinking. We have a strategic plan now, but we have a lot of really big, complicated projects that may come and hit us rather soon. And I think we might want to begin talking about a master plan. It is not a necessity, but I find value in it, and I think the strategic plan, while it lays a really good groundwork and puts some good goals ahead of us in the next couple of years, could benefit from a deeper logistical look, although I know that a master plan is not something that's easy to produce and will take quite a lot of time and work.
And money, but that's okay.
Yes, indeed.
I mean,
Yes,
master
indeed.
plans.
Studies.
In writing the 300th anniversary book, I've had to read both the 62 plan and the 96, whatever. And interestingly, in that 96 plan, there was a statement saying that in the future, big businesses are going to want mega warehouses, okay? And when I bumped into that, it was like, look, somebody told us that 30 whatever years ago. Why were we surprised?
Crystal balls were on sale and we didn't listen.
Yeah, well, but what it gets to is, and I'm sort of digressing, but I hope you won't mind.
I like it.
So it sort of gets me to, we have a plan or we get a plan. How do we implement a plan? And so on this warrant for the town meeting, there is going to be a question about whether or not we should move to a town manager. And have you given that any thought?
Yes, I have. I am very much in favor of moving to that. Couple of reasons. I'll keep it at a 10,000 foot, but we can dig in.
Yep.
First of all, I think that there is an expeditiousness to it. And by that I mean, right now, the way that the select board works, and of course I'm not on the select board, so opinions will vary. We basically have things like a weekly warrant, which for those who don't know what a warrant is, which which is a surprising number of people. It's basically the stuff that needs to be approved every week, which includes payments, which come on a weekly schedule.
List of bills.
Yep, list of bills. And so essentially every week, this group of 3 people plus the town administrator need to get together just to make sure that the town's gears work properly. And they sign off on this thing. And even if the meeting doesn't occur, 2 of those 3, 2 of the 3 need to be contacted anyway. So that's just an example, but it's one of those, like, it's a little logistical hiccup that can slow things down. In addition to that, negotiating contracts, approving certain headcount, rules when it comes to, HR in the town, these are things that could really benefit from professionalization. We are lucky to have a town administrator who is really one of the best that I've ever encountered, and I've had some great conversations with Travis. He's helped me out. But professionalizing that position and leveling it up will give a little bit more leverage to that position and hopefully free up the select board to do more policy and more thinking strategically.
And long-range thinking.
Absolutely.
I mean, seriously, it goes back to that. If you have a plan and in it says, look out for these mega warehouses, somebody better be watching.
Well, and you yourself served in government here, and I think it's one of those things where folks aren't aware how much work there is. I certainly wasn't when I first put my hat in the ring. And then when I started to pay attention, you see that, like, for a volunteer position, it's an enormous amount of work.
It is.
And to expect all the volunteers in government here, there are many of them, and they're so talented, but to stretch themselves so thin, plus they have the professional careers, plus they have their family life, plus just the dirges of every day. That is a really big ask. So why not try to make that a little bit more efficient and put it in the hands of the professionals in government who then can still serve up the big decisions to the boards that are elected so that the appropriate grooming can happen and so that people know what is going on. We can approve things, et cetera, but we can get things moving more quickly, which a small town like Holliston, that is an asset. The quicker we can move, the faster we can attract businesses, make decisions, and get things moving in the right direction.
It's a huge one for businesses, that's for sure. They've complained about that kind of thing for years.
Is that the case? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So you've referred to a couple of these, but there are plans underway for any number of improvements. We've got the DPW, we've got the Woodland Street Bridge Dam and all that happy hoo-ha, and all of the traffic considerations and so forth. So do you see that any of these or all of these might change Holliston?
Yeah, I think that there are some that will have an impact and some that won't but are needed. So the DPW facility, obviously that's not going to change the nature of the town's character, but that building is falling apart and is a safety hazard, needs to be done. And of course that will take budget. So I guess when you take something out of one bucket and put it into another, you're making a trade-off there. I think the sewer project is, to me, something that I've wanted to have happen in this town since I've gotten here. I understand that there's a lot of history. Folks who've been here a long time probably eye roll at that, and I've definitely been in meetings where when it comes up, you hear this collective groan from about half of the audience. Different time, different logistics, and a different plan from what I can understand. Why do I think that's going to impact the town? Well, I think we all know that when you put infrastructure in place that opens opportunities, it also creates trade-offs. So one thing I want to address, it's my understanding, I talked a little bit with James Keese today about what the impact would be at a logistical level. And my understanding, and I'll let him correct me if I'm getting this wrong, is that from a disruption point of view, although of course there'll be disruption, this is a much more mild plan than some of the ones we've had in the past. For those tuning in who aren't aware, little trivialties that mattered to me, like the idea of, hey, we don't have to excavate to necessarily put down pipes. There's methodologies where you can use augers to get the small pipes that you need underneath the ground, underneath roads, without disrupting traffic too much, without disrupting business too much. There will be disruptions, but it's not at that scale that I was worried about when I first heard about the project. But from a characterization point of view, once we have things like sewers in place and we increase the amount of water that can be flushed down the system, then what we've got is a place that becomes a lot more attractive to certain types of businesses. Restaurants, for example, will need that kind of infrastructure if they want to come in place. And we've all talked about the idea of having more cafes and more, more little restaurants on the corner, et cetera. There is still the basic problem of, hey, there's only 15,000 people in town. We still need to attract these places. But it can change the nature of downtown from something that's more transactional to something that feels more like a lifestyle anchor. But in so doing, and this is a larger conversation, we have to make sure that we attract the right businesses with the right character for Holliston. And there's probably some policy and some debate that needs to go around that. Some towns have chosen to limit the amount of chain restaurants, for example, and those are definitely places where franchises can come in and quickly turn a key and take advantage of new infrastructure. If we want that, that's okay. But if not, we should figure out how we're going to make that happen. And those are the kinds of conversations that I think, for instance, when we talk about, a long-term master plan or just governance in general, we should surface these conversations and have them openly. I also think they're the kind of thing that a lot of people in town won't know are being discussed. We'll have to do a better job getting more opinions in on that because, right now, I think open secret, right? In the 15,000 folks in town, there's only a couple hundred of us that maybe pay attention at any given time, but there sure are a lot of other people who will have opinions. Right. So it's critical to get them involved. So short answer is yes. Characteristics can change.
Well, the interesting thing in there is that the big issue is for the Historical Commission. They've been talking about, standards of, so do you want to tear down the building that Fisk's is in? Are you willing to tear down the building that Fisk's is in? Are you willing to tear down some of the smaller buildings that are down Central Street? Are you willing to have a big building replace 4 small buildings? All that stuff. But you're right, there are only 200 of us who are, I think it was about 137 the other day, but anyway. Okay, school department says they're going to need a new high school, and there are a whole lot of people who certainly agree with them. And one way or the other, the price tag is going to be a big one. So how do we prioritize that effort against all of the other things that are desirable and in some cases important, critical, and yet they have a huge impact on the town's tax bill?
Yeah, so I think there's a good news, bad news part of this conversation, right? First of all, let me say that I'm not religious about this opinion. I always reserve the right to be more correct tomorrow than I am today, and I'm happy for people to tell me different opinions. I'm just not the kind of person who comes in with an ironclad agenda, although I do have my own thoughts. Talking about the school specifically, I think that what we're talking about there is the facility aspect of schooling, right? And that is one of 3 different parts of the equation to me. There's the facility, there's the faculty, and then there's curriculum. And so when it comes to whether or not a new school will help the forward progress of students, I think in this case the answer is yes, but it will only be part of the equation. Now, a few years ago, I was definitely in the camp of let's fix what we've got, but obviously, we had a great report that came out where we were looking at all the different problems that the school has, little things like, hey, there's pipes running into a concrete slab that simply, if we had to fix that, would have to be removed. There's walls that need complete knocking down and building up, and at a certain point, you get to a place where you realize that the capital expenditure for fixing is only going to get you a B- facility. And so then you have to make the trade-off. I do think that I have a little bit of a contrarian point of view, I think, from some of the people I've chatted with, which is, yes, the school is an expenditure, but I actually think that it is an investment. I can only speak about my personal experience. One of the 2 reasons that we came to Holliston was that the school system had a superb reputation at the time. And this was just 10 years ago, right? And it still has a pretty good reputation, and I think the teachers are doing a remarkable job. But there are definitely difficulties when you have facilities that are falling apart that contribute to minor things like attracting talent in the teaching pool, et cetera. Folks drive by, they take a look, they go, okay, I'm not sure if this is the right place for me. And again, only one part of the puzzle, but a rather important one. And so when it comes to the trade-offs in town, I think it's important to think of the school and the construction of a new high school as a reality that will have to happen. It's going to happen at some point. B, we probably have a couple of years. It's my take that we're in competition with school systems for extra funding that are in much more dire circumstances, but our number is going to come up. Maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 3 years, but probably not this year. So we have some time to think about it. But C, to try to reconfigure this conversation to think of our schools as an asset, because towns, especially small towns, that put a lot of money into their school systems always attract new people. And we definitely have a cyclical move in and move out environment here where we've got folks who they're moving in and they'll probably move out when their kids leave. Then there are some people like me who want to throw down roots and all folks in between, the folks who have always been here. But having an excellent school system, be it a high school or middle school or elementary school, will attract new eyes. And a place like Holliston that has so many other charms will benefit from that. And when more people with liquid income come into your town, more businesses are willing to go there as well. So to me, it's part of a virtuous cycle. Of course, the trade-off conversation has to happen, and I think that when we get deeper in the next couple of years, we will need to talk about what beautiful things can we not afford if we're going to shove all that money into the schools, but with a long-term view to the idea that, yes, but when we build this, then in the years following, we may have other ways to attract new revenue. And I'm optimistic about that.
You're generally an optimistic person, are you?
If you had talked to my friends 20 years ago, I think they would tell you the opposite.
Oh, my.
But having kids and meeting people, I should say I'm a consummate introvert. I talk a lot. But I've always had a difficulty when, at least in my youth, like connecting to people. And maybe about 15 years ago, I started to force myself to get out and just talk to anyone I could. And it's lightened my point of view about the world, especially here in Holliston. As I've been saying to other people, as I've been going door to door and knocking on folks' doors, chatting about anything and everything, often stuff not related to government, I'm reminded why I love this place. And it's really the way that people talk with others. And, there's rough edges and there's characters who are unsavory, et cetera. But en masse, Holliston has remarkable people, all of them with great histories, all of them with really important points of view. And I consider it a privilege to live in a town where people can strike up a conversation about the sewer system or the fact that they're maybe grumbly about something at school, but they're happy to work towards it, or just the latest thing happening at HNN. It's a great place to live.
Good. Okay, we've talked a little bit about the strategic plan, even though it hasn't gone to town meeting as yet. So it's still, you have to really think of it as a draft or a wish list. Do you see any deficiencies?
Yeah, I have some quibbles. I mean, nothing that's major. Here's what I'd say in a positive bent. It's a good directional document to get us thinking towards something better than where we are today. And I recognize it as a really a difficult attempt to kind of set the course for the next 3 to 5 years. And I think that there are definitely stakeholders, including Ben, who worked on that night and day, and it became a bit of a bear, I'm sure. But it provides us with a compass that I think is somewhat useful. I do, there's little minor quibbles, like because of my business background, I look at the list of, there's various things that are listed as objectives and then measures of success. But the measures of success are really outputs, not outcomes. Like to have a meeting that does X, it's like, yeah, but then what? Yeah. So what is the measurable, what's the KPI? What's the thing that says that we succeeded at that? Because I can hold a meeting that everyone hates. Does that mean it's a check mark? So to me, the devil's in the details. And I think that as a directional document, it has a really good soul and is trying to move us into the right place, but I think we need that next level of logistical conversation and maybe to expand things around, the less romantic stuff like zoning, business development investment. What are we going to do with certain pieces of land that we're actually trying to either use for the town or that we want to unload? And I think that level of detail would be really useful, accepting the fact that all master plans are flawed and we will probably not reach the end of a master plan. We will need one at some point.
Oh, yes, I would certainly agree with that. I think a master plan is the next step. And in fact, when I suggested in the very first place, when I put the article in the town meeting to say, let's do a vision, and then we were supposed to get into a master plan. So we have this now, we've got a vision, and we've got it all right there. And so the next step is to put the feet to go under it to make it happen.
I'd love to pick your brain on this. This is probably a conversation that maybe is appropriate here, but for me, one of the things that I found surprising in the last couple of years here is that we have a really good planning board, but I'm used to planning boards being more involved in master plans as well, so not just the select board. So I would, if I get on the board,
they have to be by law.
By law, okay. I would encourage the members to get a lot more muscular about it because their viewpoint is so important when going down a master plan route.
Yeah, no, the master plan is actually by law to be done under the umbrella of the planning board. And the strategic plan, the visioning piece of it, is very often a part of that master plan process.
Yes.
My thinking, for better or worse at the time when I did the warrant article, was more that I wanted to have ample opportunity to have people have a conversation that wasn't being steered by anybody. So we ended up with, a vision. And then we hired a contractor, and sure enough, things started to change from that first vision to this next vision. And that is one of the problems in when you hire a consultant, is that you do start to get some sort of, they drive processes as much as they support processes.
I am very familiar with that, having dealt with McKenzie and Bain, et cetera.
Yeah, so it's a real, it's a tender spot to walk. But Anyway.
But there's some good points in there that, I think we all as citizens want to talk about. Housing density is one that could be
Well,
addressed.
that's the planning thing.
Yep,
I mean, that's
exactly.
the whole thing about planning. And I've written extensively in the book that you cannot, the history of Holliston for the 300th, that there is only one solution to affordable housing, no matter whether you mean subsidized affordable housing or market affordable housing. There's only one solution, and that's to increase the density. So if you don't increase the density, then you are accepting that the Holliston will forever be the burden of the single-family home owner. That's it.
Completely correct.
So anyway, one of the, I won't say strange, but an unexpected question came up several months ago at Coffee Haven. And somebody was asking me, what were my thoughts about non-citizen people who would not have the right to vote in national elections or state elections? Could they be permitted to vote in town elections? And I thought at one point that there might even be an article to that effect on the warrant. There isn't, but I suspect that there are enough folks for whom that is an issue, where they really have gotten involved in the community and they want to participate in the community, but they have real limits as to what they can do.
Yes.
So I know that the neighborhood you live in is demographically really like the Little League of Nations.
Absolutely.
It really is. It's just an amazing little neighborhood. Any conversation there, and what are your thoughts?
I have thought about this quite a lot. First of all, I think it's a laudable instinct at the ground level. So what I'll say is I have plenty of neighbors, as you've alluded to, who are highly involved with the schools, or they're business people who are looking to expand their own businesses. And these are people who are fantastic citizens of the town, but not citizens of the nation. Yeah. And I think that it is an asset that we should yoke somehow. So I'm really keen to have that conversation. I actually have traded some emails with Representative Irina DeRosa on this topic, and have been trying to figure out kind of what the logistics behind it would be. So again, in the good news, bad news category, right? Mm-hmm. The idea of letting non-citizens vote, there are definitely there are legal parameters that have to come into place. Yeah, and there's also constitutional issues as well. And so there have actually been a couple of bills that have gone through the legislature to sort of try to address these things. Not all of them are saying, all right, you can vote in the election. Some of them are smartly saying, all right, well, specific types of things, school boards, et cetera, more limited capacity, but places that people can actually get involved and have appointed positions or voted positions as well. So to me, it's a complicated issue that I think instinctually I would like to support, but I think that we're going to need support from a higher power. So the two bills that I think are on docket in the House right now are H712 and H706, but both of those are in committee. So not to get too into wonkery, there's
struggling along.
They're struggling along, but from my understanding, and by the way, tip of the hat to Irina DeRosa's staff, they were really communicative and they gave me a lot of information. But usually when you see bills like that kind of stuck in a committee, it's because it's lacking one or two major things. And those major things are often a leadership position champion in the House, or et cetera, in the legislature, or a organized group of individuals who are loudly supporting it, which is going to make it a thing that people will pay attention to. Right now, it's a pretty new suggestion in Massachusetts, and so there isn't a lot of public support for that. But as a conversational piece, a place like Holliston, with a lot of people who are quite passionate, might be a good place to start organizing voices to that effect, although I think that the component there will be pushing the conversation up to the state, even though we can begin the conversation at a town level.
Yeah, and I think also investigating any place else that has done it, especially a New England state would be ideal because of the form of government.
I want to believe, I could have this wrong, I think one or two towns in Massachusetts have dabbled with it, but at very limited sense. But just to circle back to the instinct, our neighbors are our neighbors, right? And I can understand the caution when it comes to granting the vote to non-citizens. And as a constitutionalist, I completely agree with the meta theory there. But I think at the municipal level, we should explore the possibility. And we can do that within the bounds of the law and make sure that we dot all the I's and cross all the T's. But at the end of the day, I have neighbors who are as active in this town as anyone else, who care about their kids just as much as anyone else, and who contribute to the town with their dollars as well. So it's a good conversation to have. And I think if we find enough champions, maybe we could be the place that starts the conversation at a state level.
Okay. What have we forgotten? What have we skipped over? I don't think we've skipped over anything. We talked about sewers. We talked about the management, the town manager position, and I guess I didn't pose the one thing about concerns with the impact on the historic buildings. I didn't say, are you concerned about the historic buildings? Because
I am concerned, but we have so many good people in government that I don't think that these are obstacles we can't overcome. Right. I believe that truly. I've rarely encountered people in Holliston, especially folks who care about this town to begin with, who are eager to tear things down and aren't willing to have a creative conversation about how to make things right. So concern, but not worry.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, again, when you start doing historical, looking back, it's really been since the first master plan that everybody said, protect the houses on Washington Street because they're the gateway and they set a picture, and that's try to protect that.
I think that's a very good point. And I also think when we talk about things like the master plan, if we actually get one going, we can talk pretty openly in there about the characteristics of what a good downtown should look like, and the rules around what kind of things can be built or changed there. We are ultimately a charming, nice New England town, and I'm sure we want to remain that and not a place with strip malls, et cetera.
Right.
I am a fan of history and preservation. I am also a fan of growth, and I think that there is a very comfortable place in between.
Okay, well, you get 2 minutes to tell me your last pitch. Okay, this is the elevator pitch from whatever.
I'll make it really personal. I very much like this town, and I believe that I'm the kind of person who can bring people together to have substantive conversations about difficult topics. I don't come through the door with a really, really strong agenda, trying to force my own way. And as people who know me will probably attest pretty openly, I'm happy to talk about just about everything. I tend to be a go-getter. I like to get things done, and I'm happy to lend my inertia to push things forward. But that will not be at the expense of other people. That will be in an attempt to try to get groups moving forward together. So if you like what you hear so far, or if you'd like to visit my website, which is at votedimmick.org, please take a look. Feel free to contact me. You will find that I am all ears and an open book. And I hope to get your vote.
Okay, sounds great, Damon, and thank you very much for joining us. That's Damon Dimmick, candidate for Select Board. Thank you. You've done your homework, so please remember to vote on May 21st. It's important for you, your family, and the community. Thank you.